Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing the album 10,000 Days by the band Tool.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
Now, I've actually already listened to Tool on this channel recently, as you might know, and we listened of course to Lateralis, but today we're going to listen to a different album of theirs, also pretty cool. But before that, I have to share with you some of my favorite bits from this album, and stay tuned because there are a lot of them. So, as I mentioned, we are today listening to 10,000 Days by Tool, and we've already listened to Lateralis. Now, I'm so glad that I'm listening to them chronologically, in the fact that Lateralis came out in 2001, and I believe this one came out in 2006, and having those two come in the chronological order really gives some context to the albums itself, the band, and how they progressed throughout those years. Now, right from the start, I can compare two main things from this album to Lateralis. The first thing being that this album is a whole lot more, let's say, chilled back, just laid back. It's all cool, you can kind of flow with this album, unlike Lateralis, which had its, let's say, angrier parts. The second thing is that this album is a whole lot more, let's say, experimental and psychedelic than Lateralis. I never really imagined to myself what would psychedelic metal sound like, but most of this album is fairly that thing exactly. And introductions of certain ideas or even instruments, let's say the tabla drums, the Indian drums on one of the tracks on here was so unexpected and really added to that really psychedelic and even somewhat 70s Beatles vibe in some way, but it's not the same thing, but it sort of is. I don't know how to explain myself. And honestly, I enjoy this album much more than Lateralis. I feel it is more akin to the progressiveness I'm looking on this list, and I felt as if it was a whole lot better. And I know my opinion is mostly debatable in the Tool community, and I think that if you'd ask most people, they'd tell you that Lateralis is better, but at least to me, in my eyes, this album was a lot more fitting. Now, looking online on reviews, I actually saw that a lot of people had some really, harsh criticism about this album, saying that it starts off well, it starts off strong, and then it just dwindles in the midsection and then goes back up at the end. But for some reason, I found it to be the entire opposite way. I found that this album started off, fine, it's good, not bad. But as the midsection came, I really enjoyed those long, stretched out pieces, which were really psychedelic and had the really interesting ideas that really sounds progressive, and I loved that section so much, and my favorite songs are totally there. Songs like Wings for Mario or the title track of 10,000 Days, they're just really long, they're stretched out, they're psychedelic, there's something you can really dive into and, have fun. The fact that it just lasts for a while and doesn't end in the, usual 3 minutes. I think some of my favorite tracks on here have to be The Pot, Lost Kings, The Conjuring song, I don't remember what's the name of it, and I think my all favorite from this album has to be Rosetta Stone. So let's talk about that specific song for a moment. So Rosetta Stone feels somewhat like it's heavy metal when combined with, like, let's say mumble rap. Now those two things I never thought would go together well, but they do this fantastically on here. I think the vocals by Keenan are so good on here. He just sells the effect. Now this song talks about a guy that was in Area 51 and he had like some contact with aliens and he has to deliver a message. And this song is like so unexpectedly humorous and energetic in all sorts of different ways. It's like over the top, so bizarre in some way. And yes, the mumbling does really help because there are lyrics, but it sounds like it doesn't say anything and it's really hard to follow if you don't have the lyrics open in front of you. And you know, as I said, it's about like this guy that met aliens and they gave him a message. They told him he's the chosen one. They told him the world's gonna end, but he doesn't know how because he forgot to bring his pen. And that's like the most funniest thing ever. I wasn't expecting it. And he like always screams like that he shit his bed because he's strapped to a hospital bed after that coincidence. And like, oh my god, it's such an odd song that I loved so much. I listened to it again, partially for the music, partially for the lyrics, partially for the freaking humor that it just resonates off of it. And yeah, I know this song can be interpreted as a sad song of someone who like experienced something and now he's having to go with like mental, you know, conflicts within himself. But I just found this song to be pretty funny and I think that's what Tool intended it to be in some way as well. And you remember that I said that I was happy that I actually listened to this chronologically and listening to Lateralis before this one? Well, I'm happy because Lateralis featured a last song called Faib de Oyad. I don't really know how you'd say it, but it's basically someone who's talking about his experience in Area 51 and that there's like stuff that the government doesn't want you to know, and he's all sorts of scared and it sounds like a thriller or a horror like skit. And I think this is the same guy we've actually met in this song specifically, and we just get the continuation of his story, and thus I love the fact that I have the context to actually infer that from both songs together. And going back to the overall music on here, I just love the fact that everything on here is not as repetitive as it was in Lateralis. I love the fact that it's more progressive. I like the fact that the music actually develops to a certain point in each song, and it goes like in different directions if it feels right. And I think that the hiatus of the 5 years that the band took between both albums really helped the music and themselves probably to mature and create something which is similar to Lateralis but also very different and in a way that I really like. And I know that many people don't consider this as their magnum opus, but I myself now have listened to Lateralis, this album and Fear Inoculum, and I personally think that this is their best out of their limited discography. And no, this album is not perfect and it's not going to be rated a whole lot higher than Lateralis. I just think that it's a lot better. It's still not my certain, specific type of music that I like, but objectively and a lot subjectively, I still think that this is great music. Oh, and before I forget to mention this album also has like this really odd last track on it, like as I said, Faib Doad on the Lateralis. This one features like some sort of something that I would at least describe as being an ominous being, even a godly being that is trying to somewhat communicate with us, but in a way which is uninterpretable. And I don't know, that song was really like scary and ominous, and it combined all the energies that this album basically has into, one piece, which is half song, half who knows. But I loved it a lot and I think it's really, really cool. But as I said on the last one, I wouldn't really consider this one as a song. What a neat cover. This one was made by the talented Alex Gray, and he just does something which is so beautiful on this cover. I think he sort of made a representation of like that godly figure that I was talking about in the last track. And I love that shade of like, let's say grayish, bluish, blackish, whatever color on here. I love how he uses that. And this cover basically is a play on light. So you have one color and different shades of that specific color on the light spectrum. And I think that's really cool. Now, I can't really tell you how or why, but this cover is just mesmerizing to me. I can look at it for a prolonged time and still find new things that I feel about it, and that's like something that you don't really get with a lot of covers, but this one just really stares back at me as I stare at it. So yeah, this cover is great. I just cannot explain with words why I think that is, but trust me, I think that it's really good. So when it comes to the rating of this album, this one gets a slightly better than Lateralis, 8 out of 10. But yeah, that's about it. I really enjoyed this one. I had a great time, but I think that is for wrapping this one up. And stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Dissolution by The Pineapple Thief, a band which I've never listened to and never heard of, so I'm really excited for it. And I guess that's all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.